Hi, Ghosties. I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
And we have another Listener Stories episode for you. This is Listener Stories 17.
So crazy because people will send them in and be like, I really hope to hear my story. And I'm like, I hope you're going to be listening next year.
Yeah, I know.
And I feel bad.
Every time we get a new one in, I'm like, oh, I really hope you're still here when we get to you. Because it'll be a minute, but we will get to you.
I'm liking the 2 times a week. I feel like we should just keep it going. As long as the stories keep coming. But we're continuing with the hot chocolate, yes?
Yes, we're continuing on with the hot chocolate for the month of December. It is chocolate caramel something. I don't remember the brand name. I forgot to grab it when I was in here, but we will insert a photo here.
But we split the bag, so our mugs are fairly empty.
And I also put a bunch of whipped cream in it. So
Macy is drinking whipped cream, and I am trying the hot chocolate. So let's go.
Very caramely.
I hate to say it. I like my hot chocolate chocolatey.
This is a good mix-up. Like if you're a regular hot chocolate drinker out there, it's good to mix it up a little bit. This is pretty tasty. Like it's rich. It's really good.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic. I'm a huge caramel girl. Like of all the candies in the world, I've always loved a caramel. If you're putting fudge on your sundae, I'm putting the melted caramel on my sundae. Like that's me. It's very caramely. I thought it was gonna be like a hint.
It is pretty. It's like a Rolo.
Yeah,
like just mostly caramel with a
dash of
coating
chocolate.
of chocolate. Yeah,
but it's
still
good.
Still very good.
Yeah, very rich though.
So of all of the hot chocolates we've tried this month, name your top one.
The cow one. Silly cow.
Me too.
I've been
like
thinking
the Java
about
chip.
It. Yes. I think that might be the best hot chocolate I've ever had.
It's pretty tasty.
I can't think of one that's better. I might just be making that up. I really liked it. I've been thinking about it since, and I keep forgetting to go and grab it. Like I went to the store yesterday, and it was on my mind, but I was on the phone with mom, so it left, and I only got stuff I didn't need.
Well, that happens to me a lot.
Is that your favorite?
Yeah, that's my favorite. Then this one.
Yeah, I think so.
Then the Abuelita. That'll come third. Ghirardelli Swiss Miss.
Ooh, no. Okay. I'm going Silly Cow.
Wait, Swiss Miss Ghirardelli.
Really?
Really.
I'm going Silly Cow, Ghirardelli, then this one, then Swiss Miss, then the Abuelita one.
You didn't like the floaty things in the...
I think that's what it was. I don't like to see things that I don't think should be there. I don't like to... It's a texture thing.
Yeah.
I'm very strange that way. I don't know. I felt weird looking at you like, you know this. You might know this. I think the little bits got to me.
Yes. I assumed when we first poured it up, I was like, yeah, Natalie's not going to enjoy this as much.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Still good.
Overall, none of them were bad, so we made it out well.
I know. I never said, like, yuck to any of them. Shocking. It's just melted chocolate and milk, but...
That's true. Well, this is the longest review we've ever had about a beverage. Would you like to move on to stories?
Yeah, please.
Our first story comes from Ash. Hi, Ghosties. My name is Ash, and I've recently discovered you on YouTube. I love your videos and have binged almost all of them so far. You both remind me so much of my own sister and I. We're big fans of the spiritual and paranormal, and one of the stories I'd like to share also involves my sister. Love a good sister tale.
Me too. I miss Kayla.
Me too. We gotta have her back. This may not be as spooky as some of the listener stories you've shared, but the events were pretty unsettling at the time. The house my sister and I grew up in wasn't particularly old, and our grandparents, still living, had lived in it prior to us. So I'm not sure why we experienced some of the things we did. To start, I do need to describe some of the house layout, so hopefully things will make sense. There are 2 sides of the house that I'll refer to as the left and right. The left side has the master bedroom, kitchen, and living room. The right side has a lengthy hallway along which are the bathroom and 2 bedrooms. Then a stretch of hallway leads to the laundry room, and at the very end, a 3rd bedroom. From that 3rd bedroom, you can see down the hallway to where the kitchen begins, but you can't see into the kitchen. I promise this is relevant. When I started reaching my teenage years, this bedroom at the end of the hallway became mine. I hated that hallway. Something about it had creeped me out ever since I was a little girl. Up until I was 18, I could not walk down that hallway at night without a light. It always felt like something was watching me or standing right behind me. As a kid, I would have nightmares of things chasing me down it. My sister's bedroom was at the start of the hallway nearest the bathroom. She would have figurines fly off of her shelves and claims she once watched one completely turn around in a circle by itself. My stepmom would hear scratching at the bathroom door while she took baths. I remember taking a shower one night and heard the cabinet door beneath the bathroom sink open and slam shut. But these were all pretty minor experiences.
They don't sound minor, but go on.
The one that stands out to me the most was when I was a teenager. I was always the first one home after school, my parents being at work and my sister at baseball practice. I was in my bedroom one afternoon when my door handle began to rattle and shake. It sounded and looked like someone was trying to open the door, but couldn't because it was locked. My door was not locked. Freaked out, I opened the door just in time to see my sister disappear into the kitchen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I just got chills.
Me too.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, my bedroom was on the opposite side of the house from the kitchen. Logically, there was no way my sister could have messed with my door handle and then made it to the kitchen before I opened the door. Even so, I had asked her if she tried entering my room, and she said no, looking too confused for me to think she was lying. On to the experience shared with my sister. I have always had insanely vivid dreams. They're like entire movies and feel so real I sometimes struggle to wake up. When I lived in that house and in that bedroom, I had a recurring dream about a young woman with long, wavy brown hair and a white dress. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but I dreamed about her so often. In the dreams, I was always her, seeing through her point of view, and I was usually getting married. It never felt quite right, but since it was just a dream, I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward a few years after I graduated high school and moved out. My sister ended up moving into my old bedroom, but eventually she also graduated and moved out. One night we were hanging out and driving to get pizza when she started talking about the weird things we'd experienced in that house. She told me that after she moved into my old bedroom, she started to actually see a woman standing in the room. She'd be in the corner or near the foot of the bed, just staring at her. She had long, brown, wavy hair and wore a white dress. I had never told my sister about my dreams, ever, until that moment. I still get chills thinking about it. That's probably the creepiest thing I've experienced in that house. There were a few other, smaller things, like hearing my name being called or hearing what I could only describe as angelic-like music. I still hear both of those sometimes today. Our family still lives in that house, but we don't talk about any spooky experiences when we're together, mostly to avoid scaring our youngest brother, who's still just a kid. There are probably more stories to tell, but I'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for everything y'all do, and I look forward to the next video. Much spooky love, Ash.
Thank you. Now I have questions. At first, when she said the white dress, brown wavy hair, and then sometimes in the dream she's getting married, I was like, okay, like, sure, that could just be, I don't know, maybe you're,
I thought she was seeing into the future.
Something like that. Yes, or maybe like even a past life or just something. And then she said her sister sees this person, and then she hears angelic-like music. Was this like a bride? Out of all the stories we always have where everyone always makes up the story of, oh, it was a bride and her man got taken out to war and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Is this really one?
My first thought when she said that her sister would see the woman standing in the corner of her room was like, maybe she was getting ready at this house, like long before. And like this was an area of, or this was a room that had a lot of emotion for her because she was getting ready to get married.
Yeah.
But she said things didn't seem quite right. So maybe there was a lot of inner turmoil for now I'm making up a whole narrative for this woman.
But I was doing the same thing in my head. I was thinking like, what could she be? What could this mean? But yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Strange.
But I want to know why one manifested in the dream and one manifested just like outwardly.
Outright?
Like what's the difference? Is one person more like sensitive-y or like has a different way of connecting to that side?
Yeah.
That's very strange and interesting to me.
Yeah, me too.
But thank you for sharing that. And
we do want to hear more.
Please discuss it with your family and see if they have seen her. But don't tell your brother.
Our next story comes from Natalia. Hi, Ghosties. I thought you would like to hear my spooky encounters with a dark entity when I was a little girl, 4 years old. One night when I was about 4 years old, I woke in the middle of the night and saw my bedroom door open. Since my bed was placed directly in front of the door, I was able to see the kitchen across the long hallway. I'm used to sleeping with the door closed, so I turned to face away from the door. I turned to my sister's bed that is placed parallel next to mine. As I turned, something caught my attention. From my bed, I was able to see two red glowing eyes looking at me from under my sister's bed.
Okay.
The eyes were slanted like a scary cartoon, but they had black pupils that burned when I looked at them. I quickly laid on my back again and pulled the covers over my head. Suddenly, I started feeling or envisioning tentacles wrapping me. It made my body feel numb. I remember yelling for my mom, but at the same time, it felt like I wasn't yelling at all. Eventually, my parents came into the room and comforted me, and I told them everything that had happened. My dad was very kind and tried to tell me it was just a toy that I saw under the bed, and he pulled out a plush toy. But I know what I saw and what I felt that night.
Tentacles?
I don't know. And the fact that
Squidward?
it was like in her mind's eye, like or like just within her mind that. Did you say Squidward?
I was going to say Squidward tentacles. I don't know why I was going to say
funny,
it.
though.
It was just coming out of my brain.
I don't remember what I was saying now. And, like halfway through my sentence, I was like,
did you say tentacle? Or Squidward?
Nothing.
You said something about it manifested something.
I have no clue. I lost it. That is so scary. And for it to have stuck with her from 4 years old, because you don't remember too much when you're 4, like maybe bits and pieces, but it was so striking that it has a lasting hold on her memory.
Why the tentacles? That's something new.
The tentacles kind of reminded me of Ursula. That was like my first thought was The Little Mermaid. Ursula, like just, I don't know, this evil.
I was going Squilliam, but that's new. When have we've never had like tentacles wrapping. That's
what scares me is, well, one is that she was kind of envisioning it.
Yeah,
like
but could feel it.
Yes. There are, and we've talked about this before, some like demons and darker spirits, entities, things that have bits and pieces of like animals, you know? I've never heard of a sea creature.
Me neither, but that's interesting. I don't know.
That's really scary. That it was that is literally a child's worst nightmare, is under the bed. Monster under the bed.
It really is. Oh my gosh. But I feel like 4 years old is when I started to actually make memories. Yeah. I remember things from 4 on. And for that to be one of the first memories you have is so terrifying like that.
Another story from that same house. I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard plates breaking from the kitchen. I got up from my bed and opened my door. My room was directly across from the kitchen, so I could see the stove light was on. I thought it could be my grandma or another family member, but I remember being concerned because it sounded like they were breaking all the dishes we had. As I was about to start walking out of my room to go see who it was, my dad quickly opened his bedroom door and told me to stop. He said, "Don't go there. It's okay. Go back to bed." I didn't question him, and I did as I was told. The next morning, I asked where all the broken dishes were and who was the one breaking them. My grandma told me there was no broken dishes and that I must have dreamed about it. There was a lot of activity in that house, but I moved away when I was 5 to a different city with my parents. Not long after, the rest of the family moved away from that home. Later on, they had told me that they had encountered the dark entity themselves, and they too have stories from this house. Warm regards and happy spooky season, Natalia.
Give us their stories.
Yeah, if you ever have a chance to get their stories, I want to hear about this, because the dad telling her, "Stop, no, just go back to bed, it's okay." He knew.
Do you think
they
all
heard
knew?
It?
They all heard the dishes?
I think so. And they were just trying not to scare her because she was only 4 or 5.
But what did they think was going on? I
don't know if they all have had encounters with some dark entity within the house.
I feel like as an adult though, I would think like, oh, we're being robbed. Like, we got to go out into the kitchen.
Maybe it's happened before, you know? Maybe he's heard it before and he's gone out there and either saw nothing or experienced something that he didn't want his daughter to see.
Oh my gosh. I just gotta chill.
My mind's immediately going to darkness for all of these. So sorry. This is what you're getting this week.
I'm scared. Every time the story says from the bedroom, I could see the kitchen, I envision our grandpa's old house. And so it's making it all feel really real. Because I remember like anytime we would sleep over there, they'd be all like, "All right, we're going to bed. Lights off. Darkness."
But I think that was less about ghosts and more about be quiet, we're sleeping.
No, yeah, I know.
You know?
And so, but I know I used to be freaked out for no reason. There was nothing happening there, but I was afraid of the dark. And so I'm envisioning all of these stories in that house and just thinking it. And so it feels
a little scarier for you.
It feels very real. And I'm freaked out.
Really scary. The grandma the next morning is like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Anyways.
Meanwhile, years later, they're like, "Oh no, actually, we saw some things." You know?
I would like to hear their stories.
Me too. Our next story comes from Lydia. "Hello, Ghosties Pod. Hope you are both doing well. I don't know if you will or have done a haunted U.S. forts episode. I just found this pod and have been binging in the midst of an internship. But Fort Leavenworth, Kansas would be a great option to look into. Here is a map of where my house was. It is in close proximity to haunted places in the fort. The rookery is the one I heard the most. I was told of a woman who would chase after people screaming and clawing."
Clawing?
We need to look into this.
Yeah, I'm interested.
"I was at Fort Leavenworth where my dad was stationed for the Army for about 3 years. I was in elementary school here. Our home was on Grant Avenue, the main road that cut through the center of the fort. The house we lived in was built sometime in the late 1700s or early 1800s. I had always heard from the older kids on the bus that ghosts haunt the fort. The rookery was most common to hear about on the bus. But I didn't know that it was true until this encounter and when I was older and researched. I remember it was 3 a.m., my alarm clock showing brightly at 3 a.m. I sat straight up in bed, wide awake. Something had awoken me. Across from my bed was a mostly bare wall, but in the dark, something moved. At first, I thought it was a car passing outside, but I realized it hadn't passed over the wall. The shadow was still there. There on the wall was a shadow of a woman pushing a carriage, like a hooded baby carriage. She began walking slowly at first, making her way to the center of the wall, and then something changed. She stopped, turned her head as though to look behind her at something, and then abruptly started running, leaving the carriage behind. I remember being frozen, just watching the shadow of the woman disappear as the baby carriage left behind. I wasn't scared at first, just confused and concerned, but then I saw it. A second shadow appeared. This shadow felt dark, menacing. This wasn't just another shadow. It was something else, something wrong. It felt evil. The figure swallowed the wall, consuming everything and the carriage. I immediately knew I had to get out of the room. I jumped up and headed for the door to my parents' room, but just as I reached for the handle, it started to jiggle, like someone or something was trying to open it from the other side. Panic hit me. I couldn't bring myself to touch the door. There was another door that led to the adjoining room, but I was too afraid to move. Instead, I ran back to my bed, pulling the covers over me, praying that whatever I saw wouldn't come get me. For the rest of the night, that door handle kept periodically shaking, rattling softly, as if whatever was behind it was waiting for me to open it. I lay there, terrified, until I heard reveille at 6 a.m., the bugle call signaling the start of the duty day. The sound cut through the silence, and the rattling finally stopped. Love y'all, Lydia.
What?
Thinking you're running to safety. Thinking you're running to safety to your parents' room. Nope, it's waiting there behind the door for you.
That's what got me. It's waiting. And it kept jiggling the handle like, come on.
Enticing her. Yeah.
Oh my God. I hate it. I hate it. I was not scared just by like the shadow. I was like, oh, okay, shadow. It's the actual handle thing. The
handle got you?
That's too much. Yeah.
I don't like that the shadow, she felt that the shadow was evil.
Was dark.
Like it came and she immediately knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
I always trust when people in stories say, I knew something was off, because I felt that way. There's no explainable reason. There's nothing going on that could tell you why something feels bad, but you just know something is bad. It's just that deep intuition.
It's crazy.
And I trust that.
Oh yeah, me too. It's crazy how we have that deep knowing, like in moments innately. In moments of like high stress or things like that. Humans, and I know specifically like women have that just innate knowing.
But I think it's a people thing when we know we're in danger.
That too. Yeah. Where our instincts just kick in.
Even spiritually.
Yeah. Especially spiritually. That's crazy. But
Thank you for sharing that. I will add Fort Leavenworth to our list.
I've seen
right now.
People comment that before too.
Have they?
I think so.
Yeah, well, it's going on the list now, for sure. Our next story comes from Jessica. Hey sisters, I'm sorry this is kind of long, but I wanted to share a story that my dad once told me. This happened maybe 10 years ago, but I still can't get over how creepy it is. So a little background. My dad used to work for a company that required him to drive out of California occasionally. He never liked to leave my mom, brother, and me home alone for too long, so he would do his best to make his work trip as short as possible. When he was told he had to make yet another work trip, he could take the next door neighbor with him, as he had always done. My dad said as they were driving back home in the middle of the night, he had seen something in the middle of the road. He said he slowly stopped because he didn't want to hit it and also wanted to see what it was. As he moved closer, he came across a tall, super skinny animal like a wolf on its two legs with blood all over it. He said he could smell it and it started growling. He said all the hairs on the back of his neck stood up and he stepped on the gas. He said he and the guy couldn't figure out what they had seen, but my dad said he thought maybe it was the devil.
Oh.
So, well, I was watching one of the podcast episodes about skinwalkers, and you had mentioned the four corners, and the story my dad had told me came to my mind. So I asked my dad exactly where he was when he saw the scary animal, and he had said between Arizona and Utah, and I told him he was most likely seen a flesh pedestrian, and how there is a Navajo reservation around there as well. Once I told my dad that, he had called his friend who is native and told him what I said. My dad explained to him what he had seen, and he said yes, most likely that's what it was, and how some are good luck, but some can be bad luck, and how when he visits the reservation, they can't brush their hair outside of it and can't walk around at night. My dad now believes what he had seen was a flesh pedestrian, and that it did give him bad luck because after that, he lost his job and got sick. My dad also said my aunt had done Olympia on him, and he said that the egg was full of darkness, and the guy next door, I'm guessing it was just as bad for him too, and now I'm wondering if that guy got bad luck from the same thing or just bad luck that he drew himself.
Love that us talking about it made her go back and talk to her dad and now uncover this whole thing.
Figure it out, yeah.
That is so cool, first of all. Wow, love.
That's wild though, years later, connecting all of these dots between the sighting and then the bad luck that your dad endured afterwards.
That's really crazy.
I'm sorry he saw it.
Yeah, me too.
Our next story comes from Victoria. Hi, I have some stories for you guys from when I was around 7 to 8 years old. Sorry if I make grammar errors, but I live in Denmark. My first odd and or paranormal encounter was when I was around 8 years old, living in a house with my mom, stepdad, and my little dog. A little backstory. I have always been into the paranormal and magical stuff, and at this point, I've already looked into Ouija boards and Bloody Mary and stuff like that. But I cannot recall if this experience was before or after I actually played with the board or any other paranormal thing. But nevertheless, I did a lot of paranormal games.
Oh no.
I was laying in my bed one night trying to fall asleep. My door was not fully shut, as I liked the light from the hallway to shine in a bit. But as I laid there trying to get cozy, suddenly I heard steps right outside my room. It didn't sound right to me, meaning that I knew my parents were in the living room and they had to go through the living room to the kitchen and then onto the hallway before they could reach my room. So I would have heard if it was them. I tried to think for a second and then called out to my parents, asking them if our dog was in the living room with them. They replied yes, and right after that, I asked them if she'd been there the whole time. They said yes again. And I do not remember if I said okay or nothing at all, but I remember thinking and being scared because those steps were so real. They were not just floor cracking, like you could tell. I ended up just hiding under my covers until I fell asleep. Story 2. At around the same age, in the same house, I talked with my stepsister, who was 6 months older than me, about paranormal and scary things. Above us were windows going through the attic and roof so the light could get in. And since it was evening, there wasn't much to see, but some streaks of light from the house were reflected into them, or so I thought. I came to the conclusion that I would wave to the windows as the streaks of light kind of resembled a silhouette. And right after I did that, looking into the windows, something slowly moved back and forth like it was waving back at me.
No.
I quickly stared back down at my stepsister and don't remember what we did after.
No.
Yikes. At least it was friendly.
No,
At least
okay.
It was just like,
no.
hi, I see
No.
you too.
Because I'm thinking either it's friendly, a kid, whatever, just like, hello. Or it's like taunting. Or it's like learning her movements.
Oh, I don't like that. Like just
And
kind of mimicking
it. I'll do that too.
I don't know if y'all could hear this, but there's a train in the background and I am sweating. Just this mixed with the train is just making me not feel well.
It's very loud.
Story number 3. Around the same age, again, in the same house, I used to sleepwalk a ton. Like, really a lot. I didn't do anything scary per se, but one can argue that a kid walking around at night, not really themselves, is scary enough.
Agree.
Agreed. Strong agree. It was weird though. I only ever sleptwalked if my head faced the wrong direction. Like, my head was normally towards the door, but if I fell asleep with my head laying where my feet would be, I would sleepwalk for sure.
Weird. Okay.
Very weird. It's like her sleeping body knew she wasn't where she was supposed to be.
Yeah.
When I would sleepwalk, I would just go stare at my parents, and when they would ask me if I should be asleep, I would just arrogantly say no and then go back to sleep, which is kind of funny. That was the only thing I really did from what I know of. My stepsister didn't sleepwalk as much, but when she did, she would go outside and she sometimes slept in a gown, which is a creepy sight.
Oh.
I only ever sleptwalked in that house and I lived in over 10 places. So that is the weird part of it all. That this is the only home that she's ever sleptwalked in.
Yeah, something's going on. I don't know what causes sleepwalking or, what if there's like triggers for it or something, but why only in this house? I would bet money you didn't change much of your routine or your diet or anything from house to house. It was probably the same stuff. So why that house?
I'd like to know as well. Story number 4. When I was a couple years old, but still in the same house, I was more interested in magical stuff and magic in general. I brought a friend over one day and told her about this magic I read about. It was fine and wasn't creepy or anything. We were home alone at around 2 p.m., so everything seemed normal. But suddenly, while we were talking about all this witchy stuff, the radio turned all the way up and we flipped out for a second and then I just went and turned it off. I don't remember what we did after that, but it was so creepy and my friend reacting to it as well just confirmed for me that it wasn't just me hearing stuff, which I don't know if it made it better or worse at the time. Those are a couple of things I've experienced. I think there's some more, but these are the most vivid ones. Bonus, when I was writing my first story, my phone just started deleting some of the text on its own, so I don't know what's up with that, but kind of creepy too. Thanks for the pod.
It didn't want you to tell us.
No.
Whatever
I don't
it is.
like that.
Oh,
I don't like that at all.
I just gave myself like a straight chill.
You're going to give me a stroke.
I'm scared.
Those are so creepy. It's like the ghost inside was like, I don't like magic. Don't talk about that.
Side note to my lore. Do you remember that very brief time growing up when I wanted to be a magician?
Yeah, you've talked about it before.
Oh, I thought I talked about wanting to be a mechanic on here.
You wanted to do a lot of things.
I wanted to be a cat as well.
For a long time.
For a long time, I wanted to be a cat, and then I wanted to be a mechanic, and then I wanted to be a magician, and then I wanted to be an astronaut.
I wanted to be a pop star, which I cannot sing at all. I wanted to be, next I wanted to work at NASA. I didn't want to be an astronaut because going into space scares me, but I wanted to work in mission control somewhere, being some kind of astrophysicist or aerospace engineer.
I could still see you doing something like that.
That would be a blast. I don't know anything about physics. Oh, haha, that's pretty good. And then I wanted to be a forensic pathologist.
I remember that. That was a heavy stage for you for a while.
For a long, long time. Until about junior year of high school.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be a nurse. And then
English degree.
I got an English degree and I do a podcast.
Woo, woo, woo. And I exist. I work somewhere. I work somewhere I would have never thought I would work ever in my entire life. So
that's true.
But I like it. And I also do the podcast. Come a long way from wanting to be a cat.
That's good. Okay. Moving on. Our next story comes from Maggie. Hello, I just found your podcast and absolutely love it. I thought I'd share my paranormal story that happened to me in the Shenandoah National Park.
National Park.
Love a good national park story.
I don't, but I do.
I follow a podcast called National Park After Dark.
Oh, I didn't know that was a
good
thing.
Stories. So check it out if you haven't. Last year, I lived about 45 minutes away from Shenandoah National Park. I knew I wouldn't live in Virginia for very long, so I wanted to go hiking while I was still nearby. I had the whole week off, but my boyfriend was working every day. Being a strong, independent woman, I decided to pick out 1 or 2 hikes to do the next day. I am an experienced solo traveler, and I'm smart about going places alone. I always stay alert. I leave my location on my phone and watch. I text family and friends the times that I should be out of the trail and within phone service. I always leave a note in my car on the windshield that says my name, number, emergency contact number, and the date and time I should be back at my car. I leave fingerprints clearly on the windshield and backlight of my car. Anyways, back to the hike. That is so good to be aware like that. I wouldn't even think of anything like that. Wait! Wrong sound effect.
That's what I meant to click. Okay, wait, so
God.
pretend none of that happened. Okay, she just told us everything.
No, I'm leaving.
Okay, well, listeners, pretend none of that happened. She just said she's very prepared traveler.
I'm crying.
I forgot what button to press.
That was so sudden.
It scared me.
Oh my God. Okay, anyway. Great job. Great job, Maggie.
I'm sweating. Okay.
We all need to take a page out of Maggie's book. Oh
Yeah.
my
Wow.
Lanta.
What a prepared person. That is... Stop laughing.
Sorry. Just ignore me. Just ignore me.
That is just, wow. You really know your stuff, and that is very smart to do if you're ever going on a hike. She's crying. Okay.
Thank God I just, literally yesterday bought waterproof mascara. Oh, okay. Pull it together. So anyway, back to the hike. I was blasting Taylor Swift in one earbud. I leave the other earbud out so I can hear if someone is biking nearby or whatever I could need to hear. It takes me about an hour to hike down to the waterfall. I walk past 1 or 2 couples on the way down, but overall, it is a pretty vacant trail since it's the middle of the day on a weekday. I snap a few pictures for my All Trails app and then start the trek back up. As I get about halfway to the car, I hear footsteps behind me. The footsteps didn't sound far away. They sounded like they were on my heels. I whipped my head around and saw nothing. I stood there for a second and just waited to see if maybe it was an animal. I knew it wasn't. It was so clearly 2 feet and right behind me. I pulled my one earbud out, slid it in my backpack, pulled out my pepper spray and knife, and continued to walk. About 2 minutes later, it happened again. Now, I grew up in Texas. I didn't know the folklore stories about the Appalachian Trail, or Appalachian Trail, however you say it, okay, people? Sorry, I'm salty about that, people. I don't know how to say it, and everyone's telling me something different, and every time I get a comment, I'm just... explode.
The one video of ours that for some reason got so many views and I felt terrible after recording it. I was like, this is a flop.
And it's the most controversial. It's probably why, because everyone's commenting, you're saying it wrong or you're saying it right.
Yes.
And so it just popped off in the algorithm.
It's so good. Anyways.
I had never heard the saying, you hear something, no you didn't. You see something, no you didn't. My boyfriend told me this after I reached the car and called him freaking out. So I'm standing rigid, still in the middle of the trail. I know that something's behind me, and every time I turn around, it's gone. But the sound of footsteps are so close that it feels like the thing is breathing down my neck. I know a human man is not hiding that fast. I'm religious, and my mom had taught me to pray when I'm scared. So I put away the pepper spray and knife, and I start praying out loud. I asked for God to send down an angel to walk me back to my car and protect me. I repeated it about 3 times. It felt like a dark cloud lifted off me, and I was able to start walking again. It took me about 20 minutes of walking in silence back to the car. I will continue to solo travel, but I won't be hiking alone in the Appalachian Mountains again.
Oh, I feel like that could have gotten so dark.
That is so chilling.
Oh, it's so scary. But I love stories where someone prays and they feel that weight, because I've experienced things like
Me
that.
too,
and
me too.
It's so real, and I relate to this story, and that's so scary.
Yeah, I'm glad that helped her. That
Me
worked
too.
for her.
Me too.
To hear footsteps that close to you, though, is just so gut-wrenching. Like, I would be so scared out of my mind. Thank you for sending that in, Maggie. That was really good.
I wish I could be a solo traveler. I admire people that are brave enough, strong enough, cool enough, experienced enough. Like, wow, props to you. That's
Agreed.
awesome.
Our next story comes from Alexis. I've had a few ghost experiences in my house, like random things moving or seeing shadow figures, but the scariest story I have are the mimic type stories. There was one day where I was playing a game with my younger sister. She was around 5 or 6. In my room, and I got up to go to the bathroom or something. When I got back, as I turned the corner into my room, I see my little sister ducking down, sort of hiding from me, run into my closet. She's done this before, so she could jump out and scare me, so I figured that's what she was doing. I laughed and said something along the lines of, "Nice try," or "I got you," and peeked around the corner into my closet. That's when I see there's no one in the closet. I go to my sister's room, and there she is, sitting on her bed like she has been since I left the room around 10 minutes ago. My little sister has also seen some sort of mimic. There was one time when she went down to our basement to grab some extra toothpaste or something that we kept down there. She said when she went to grab it, she saw our mom wearing different clothes and a different hairstyle down there doing laundry. Our mom looked up at her and she realized she was actually upstairs. She ran upstairs and refused to go back down after that. The last story I'll talk about is when she walked into the kitchen and saw a woman. She said that was dressed in all white with a bun in her hair and a veil over her face, walking around looking like she was lost or was trying to find something. As soon as she saw her, she ran out. I have more stories, but those are probably the scariest so far.
The mom?
Making eye contact with her mom or looking at her mom and her mom looking at her, and that's when she realized Mom's not down here. That one,
unwell.
That one does make me a little sick.
It's the seeing the people, the hearing, or like, the mimicking voice. That's one thing. That's terrifying. You see your mom doing laundry.
Your mom looks at you. It looks at you.
I want to know what happens in the scenario when you interact with it. When you go, "Oh, hey, Mom, I thought you were upstairs."
I don't want to know.
I just made my hands go numb.
The woman in white, I've been watching Ghost Whisperer again, and it reminded me of Ghost Whisperer, where you'll just like walk in and the ghost is just like wandering around kind of lost.
Yeah.
And then they notice Melinda Gordon is there. Just like, you could see me, like
yes.
That's
Aww.
what I pictured, was she was just kind of like, didn't know she was dead or couldn't find someone who could help her,
Well, that just made me sad.
And the sister was like, nope.
Yeah.
Not me. That would be you.
Yes.
Our next story comes from Jaden. Hi, Macy and Natalie. I recently discovered Ghosties, and I've been overwhelmingly obsessed, to say the least. Y'all are so amazing, and I love listening to the pod when I'm getting ready for work in the mornings or falling asleep at night. Anyways, sorry for the fangirling nonsense. Here's my experience.
The amount of people that say they listen to us to fall asleep.
Frightening.
It really is. It would give me nightmares.
I could listen to true crime falling asleep. I could not listen to paranormal
Same.
falling asleep.
Same. Isn't that weird?
It is a little, I think. When I was around 11, my aunt was house sitting for a rich family, and I mean rich. While they were off on some glamorous vacation, with the owner's permission, of course, she invited my cousin and me over to swim in the pool. The house was massive and gorgeous, but it still had this eeriness that lingered even in broad daylight. As soon as we stepped inside, I felt it, an unfamiliar, subtle energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. But I shrugged it off and convinced myself I was just overwhelmed by this mansion of a house. I didn't want to ruin the fun, so I went on about my day.
Trust your instincts. Trust your gut.
After swimming in the pool for a while, we got bored and headed inside. The family had a game room that was unreal. Pool tables, arcade games, darts, and even a claw machine that looked somewhat out of place. My cousin and I went wild, trying every game we could get our hands on. Of course, I couldn't resist the claw machine though, despite failing to win anything after what felt like 100 tries. That's when things took a turn. While we were playing another game, the claw machine suddenly came to life. At first, we thought it was one of those random demos, the ones that show the claw moving to attract players. But it didn't stop there. The claw started swinging all crazy, grabbing at the toys, one after another. We stared in disbelief as it kept pulling prizes out until the prize chute was overflowing with stuffed animals. Then the lights around the game flickered and a distorted, almost mocking version of its cheerful music played. It became warped. Terrified, we ran to call my aunt. She brushed it off, calling it a glitch, though the look in her eyes said she didn't quite believe her own words. She's definitely a believer, but with how young we were, she didn't want to startle us more than we already were. We tried to shake it off, but that night the air felt thick, heavy with something unseen. Around 3 a.m., I woke up shivering. The TV was off. The house, which had been filled with the hum of electronics along the sound of my cousin and aunt's familiar voices, was suddenly deathly silent. My cousin and aunt had gone to bed at some point, leaving me all alone on the couch. The silence was suffocating, like someone was watching, waiting. Suddenly, I felt a cold brush against the back of my neck, as if fingers were playing with my hair. My heart raced, and before I could react, the sensation turned into a tug. I jumped up to run, but something yanked at my wrist. Hard. It felt like a hand, its gripping tightening with each passing second, pulling me back toward the darkened game room. The pain was sharp, intense, like claws digging into my skin. I finally broke free and bolted upstairs, screaming for my aunt. When she saw my wrist, her face went pale. There, on my skin, was a deep red mark, like a handprint. I begged her to take me home, and the next morning my mom picked me up. My mom never believed what happened, even after hearing 3 different accounts of the same story. After the owners returned, my aunt asked if they had ever experienced anything strange in the house. Without hesitation, they shared their story. A spirit, he, who was often drawn to the game room. They said he loved to play with things in the house, moving them around, hiding them for months at a time. When my aunt mentioned the claw machine, they froze. They told her that no matter how often they put the toys back in the main part of the game, they'd be back in the prize chute nearly every morning. They tried unplugging things and being more attentive to where they placed things, but nothing worked. They didn't know why, but they believed the spirit liked to lure people in, especially kids. I've never returned to that house, and I haven't had another full-blown paranormal encounter since. But sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I can still feel the cold hand on my wrist. I'll never forget that, and I'm so glad I haven't experienced anything since. Thanks again for having your pod. Keep up the beautiful work, ladies. Jaden.
No.
I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but the entire time I was telling that story, Natalie was like, like her whole body was just like I'm jerking with fear.
Uncomfortable because I'm thinking like, oh, the claw machine, but then for it to grab her and try to pull her back.
Yeah.
Why is it obsessed with doing that? That is so, it's like she's a stuffed animal. It's like, oh, got another one. Oh, got another one.
Oh, I don't like that it's like, it's prize.
It's a prize. Oh, yes. I'm scared. I'm freaked out. I don't like it. And then the coldness of the hand too.
Like we always say, if that was it, maybe you could play it off.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like, it was a dream, even though we know it's not. The ants saw the handprint.
Oh, yeah.
There was a handprint left on their wrist.
I don't like it at all.
Why does it want kids? Because it wants to play?
But that's so aggressive.
Or like you said, is it a prize?
That's too aggressive for it to be like, oh, we're playing a game. He he he. That's too aggressive.
Our next story comes from McKenna. Hey girls, my name is McKenna and I have recently discovered your podcast and fell in love. I've not been able to stop listening. Also, yes, you can share this on the pod if you'd like. So sorry for any grammar mistakes or misspelling. I'm just going to jump right into my story, as it will probably be on the longer side. So I grew up in a haunted house with my family of 5, and we all share some really spooky stories that I will be talking about. I have always lived in this house since I was born. It's a small gray farmhouse that I've always called home, and still do. It's important to include the fact that my mom had also grown up in a haunted house just down the street from our house. My grandma still lives in that house today. The stories from that house are kind of fuzzy, but the main thing I remember was my uncle came home from school one day and the house was shaking. The paintings on the walls were shaking, almost like an earthquake, only not outside, just in the house. My mom had many other experiences, like a lamp flying off her dresser, just stuff like that. Okay, I'm not even kidding right now. I'm just typing, now let's move on to what happened in my house, and my computer went to complete static. Like, not black and white static, but the colorful static, like it was broken. So I turned it off, then back on, and it was completely normal. So creepy.
Why are these people having technical difficulties trying to send us their stories?
I don't know, but I hate it. I hate it.
I'm getting really freaked out. I don't like that. For that to be the second person this episode.
I've had experiences while I'm writing episodes for this.
I don't like that.
Me neither. Not to mention I'm sitting in the living room of the house that I'm talking about. Again, because I still live in the house. Anyways, this story involves my grandpa who passed in 2019. We had experienced many paranormal things in the house previous to this, so that day we had a medium come to cleanse the house. After the medium left, my grandpa and mom were sitting on the couch drinking wine when my grandpa said, I don't really believe there's anything in this house spiritually. Seconds after he said that, his wine glass shattered in his hand.
It's like, oh, you want to see? That's
Yeah.
like that one video of the knife. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that like
it like
pops
pulls out of the thing.
Yeah. One time my family was going out and decided to put a recorder in the basement, the most haunted space, to see what would happen. So they put it in my brother's room and went out to dinner. They come home and play back the recording just to hear someone grab the recorder and run through the basement, opening and slamming doors, breathing heavily into the recorder, and then boom, it all stopped.
Oh my God.
We found the recorder on the other side of the basement.
Do they have a dog? Do they have a cat? Do they have a rabbit?
I don't think one that would grab a recorder,
a rat,
slam doors, and drop it on the other side. No.
A ferret.
I'm gonna say no.
A weasel. A hamster. I don't
like that at all.
To pick it up and run with it.
No. Breathing heavily.
It's playing with you.
Slamming doors. Yes.
It's just playing with you. It's like, oh, he wanted to see. I'll show you.
I hate that she's still in this house.
I do too. I'm sorry. I forgot that detail. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
In our laundry room, which is located in the basement, a man's voice told my dad to F off very aggressively. So
Okay.
is it playing or is it
angry?
annoyed? Like, why are you recording me?
Oh.
Get out of my space.
Oh my gosh.
Another time, my mom was sitting in her bed working at home while my dad was at work. At that time, they were working in the closet, which is in their bathroom that's attached to their room. So she's just working on her computer when she hears someone sanding and hammering the walls in the closet. My mom was assuming my dad came through the back door and got home early and was working in the closet. So she yells out for my dad to ask for water. The working sound stopped, but no sign of my dad. So my mom proceeds to the closet and opens the door. No one is in the closet. Freaked, she calls my dad and he tells her he is still at work and won't be home for a few hours.
No, you'll be home now.
Yeah, get home immediately.
Or I'll be at your job now.
I'm leaving, yeah. When I was younger, 3 to 5 years old, I used to talk about the woman outside my window. I don't like that.
No, me neither.
Once I walked out in the living room where my brother and dad were sitting. I was already put to bed in my crib and had no reason to be outside of my crib. We had this TV that we lost the remote and it had not been on in a while. So I walked out, looked at the TV. The TV turned on static. Then I turned around and walked away. The TV shuts off and my dad and brother just look at each other like WTF just happened.
She's Matilda.
Yeah.
She's doing it with her mind.
I had 3 little paintings on the wall in my room that used to swing back and forth, and the marks are still on the wall today. The day my grandpa passed away was terrible. The cops were searching for him all day. So were my parents, and my grandma was out of town on her way home when she heard her husband was missing. My mom and dad, mom crying, were talking to the police because they could not find him when a tree in the forest next to them fell, crashing down, making the ground rumble. It is incredibly important to mention the day was so still. No breeze, no wind, nothing. Just stillness when the tree crashes down. Almost like he was mad they couldn't find him and wanted to put our family's mind to rest knowing they found him. He passed due to a heart attack in his car and the police found him that night.
Oh.
He was always over at our house, always hanging out watching football games or just hanging out with his family. There was one chair on our back deck he always sat in. A few months after his passing, we were cooking dinner. My dad was on our deck grilling and me and my mom were inside making soup when my dad came in freaked out. Me and mom asked him what's wrong. And he said, Pop-Pop's chair just pulled out on its own. I freaked out and ran outside, and sure enough, his chair was pulled back like someone went to sit in it. After his passing, the haunting stopped at my house. I truly believe he is watching over our house in heaven and keeping the bad energies away. Although I sometimes feel like something is watching me from the dark corners of the basement, I do feel safe knowing my Pop-Pop is protecting me from above. Hope this makes it on the pod, and I have so many more stories I'd love to share if you'd like to hear them. You girls are awesome and congrats. You guys are growing so fast as deserved. Thank you. We do want to hear more. And these were all it was a wild ride through these stories.
I felt a lot of ups and downs. I was moving so many times because I'm hot. But so I was like, okay, I'm going to spread my legs out. And then I got scared. So I had to be like, oh, and curl back up. So yeah. Every time you see me, I'm going to be like in a new position on this couch.
That's funny.
I couldn't contain myself.
I'm sorry about your Pop-Pop. That's
so
sad. But I do like the idea that he's watching over you and he sent off all the negative spirits like, get out. This is my family. I'm taking over now.
That's really sweet. And I do believe things like that.
Our next story comes from DonnaJean. My encounter was in Finger Lakes, New York. Me and my family went camping there. There was me, my mom, my dad, and my brothers and sisters, my older brother's fiance, and a close family friend. The first night there was nothing. The next day, we had the feeling of being watched that night around the campfire. We saw what looked like a candlelight. It moved closer and closer. It was within 50 feet, then it vanished. The next day, one of my brothers comes running out of the forest saying they had seen a man dressed as a cowboy. We continued to see shadow figures. That night, the dogs began to bark, and we heard the breaking of sticks and footsteps. Then something or someone began to throw small sticks at us. We ended up cutting our trip short and leaving the next day.
As would I.
Yes.
I get the feeling that it did not want them there. You were not supposed to be there.
No, that was their campground.
And it was smart to leave, I think. If you were ever in that situation where a spirit was being like pestering you, I'm gone. I'm gone that night.
It's not your home, especially, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gone that night. If I'm showing up somewhere and I get the feeling that it's telling me to get out, fine. No questions asked. I'm gone. Questions later, but not in the moment.
Later, yes.
Not in the moment.
Our next story comes from Cande or Cande. I'm not sure. So let us know in the comments if this is you. I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of days, and I wanted to share a crazy story that happened to me. To begin with, I wanted to say that I'm a very sensitive person when it comes to the paranormal, mostly in my dreams. My story happened in 2018. My grandfather passed away that year in February due to cancer. I'm so sorry. A couple of months later, I had this really crazy dream. I was with my family outside of a Mexican restaurant where they could contact a loved one who had passed away. A waiter took us to our table. It had an extra chair and told us that we would call Apo, my grandfather. So we waited. A couple of minutes later, Apo suddenly appeared in the free chair and we started to talk. He told me that he was watching over us, that he loved us, and that he was very happy and proud of everything we were doing. The next thing I remember was waking up. That same day, we were having lunch with my family at my uncle's house. I told them about my dream, and that's when my aunt said, "Did you know that today is the Day of the Dead in Mexico?" I had no idea. We were shocked. I kept on having experiences, but nothing as crazy as this. Love your podcast, and I hope you read this.
That's such a good one to end on. Yeah. I love when we talked about like visitation dreams and the Day of the Dead, whenever we talked about that. I love all those stories. They're so heartwarming. I mean, they're like a punch in the freaking stomach. They're sad, but they're always so sweet.
They're always really loving. They just like the family's coming to like, I love you. I'm watching over you. Thanks for remembering me. You know,
it's so cute. I love it. Thank you for sending
Thank you for sharing that so much. And thanks to everyone for sharing their stories this week. If you'd like to share one of your stories with us, you can send it to us on email. It's ghostiespod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear it. You can follow us on social media at ghostiespod. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video if you feel compelled to do so. Share it with some of your spooky friends. We appreciate all of the time that you take to watch us, to talk to us, to respond to us. It means a lot to us.
You have no idea how exciting it is for us. Like, I get hyped.
Agreed. If you're on podcast as well, we see you. Give us 5 stars if you don't mind, and share that as well to people who love podcasts rather than YouTube. Other than that, we will see you next Monday for our last episode of the year.
Oh, sad. Goodbye.